Nemo Radio is on the air.
A, B, C. A, always, B, C, closing. Always be closing. Always be closing.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers only. Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
Hey, it's John Nemo. Welcome back to another episode of Nemo Radio. Wanted to talk today about an interesting dynamic I'm seeing on LinkedIn, kind of a misconception, a misunderstanding, and it all revolves around a simple line I never forgot that my brother-in-law, who's just an amazing sales guy, he told me this years ago. He said, and let me set up the quote first, but basically he's been in sales for like 30 years, and so he, back in the 90s and everything, when he was doing sales, right, pre kind of internet, social media and everything, he did the typical, belly to belly type sales, right, where you take a client out to dinner and you take a client out to a ball game and you talk and you have fun together and you get to know each other and, personalize the engagement. And then, he would sell whatever service to the person. And so I remember one time being around him and he's like, oh, this guy's texting me wanting to know if I have any tickets to the Twins game or wanting to know if I can, go out to dinner and this and that. And he's like, I'm like, what's that all about? He goes, I don't need more friends. I need clients. And that guy doesn't want to buy. He's not a buyer. Like, he just wants free tickets. He just wants to be buddies. And listen, that's fine, but I got work to do. I'm going to use those tickets on a prospect, And so what it really came down to, that line I never forgot that I quote all the time that my brother-in-law said was, I need clients. I don't need more friends right now. And so the idea being how this applies on LinkedIn. One of the core things I've always preached about LinkedIn and that I love about LinkedIn and how it is so unique for prospecting is you can instantly know for anyone that you approach on LinkedIn all these different icebreakers to make a personal connection. So just by looking at a prospect's LinkedIn profile, you can see where they live, where they went to school, what type of work they do, how long they've been at a certain company, if you have people you both know in common, volunteering, things they talk about. So it's very easy to really do that Dale Carnegie how to win friends and influence people approach where you can talk to someone on LinkedIn about their favorite topic on earth, which is themselves, right? And so when you engage with someone on LinkedIn, you can ask them, hey, I see you live in Chicago. Are you a Bears fan? Is there any hope for your football team? Or, hey, I see you went to, such and such university. Do you still keep up with the football team? Like, I go to sports just because that's what I'm comfortable with. But for you, it could be, hey, I see you volunteer for the YMCA, and that's really cool. What got you into that? Or, hey, I see you're a marathon runner. Congratulations. Or, hey, I see you love, you live in Florida. Do you like to do a lot of fishing? Whatever it might be. And so what's been interesting is I've had people come to me lately and say, it's really hard to try to do that at scale. Like, that just isn't a practical thing. Yes, it works great for engagement and it gets people to respond. But too often what I found and what we found with clients is you can do that. You can do all that personal engaging and warm people up and be friendly, similar to what my brother-in-law used to do in the 90s, taking people out to dinner and meeting for lunch and, having a beer and going to a ball game. But what if they're not a qualified buyer? What if they can't afford your services? What if they don't have a need? What if they're not in pain right now around that service? And you might make a friend, which is great, but if it's during the workday or you're using work resources, is that really what you want to be doing? So what I've decided, what I've figured out with LinkedIn is you have to just take a step back. And this is a little counterintuitive sometimes, especially if you've read my book, LinkedIn Riches, and other, approaches that I talk about all the time. But I think what I need to do is clarify for people, there's kind of a two-step process here, especially when I'm out prospecting on LinkedIn or when, our done-for-you LinkedIn lead generation agency, Nemo Media Group, when we're doing it for a client. Step one is we're trying to gauge interest. We're trying to identify interest first. So if you walk through the whole lead generation process with the way LinkedIn works, right? Number one is, of course, you have a client-facing profile. And I've talked, ad nauseum about that in other places. And I'll put a link in the show notes to my free LinkedIn lead generation templates and the ultimate profile template. So you can use that to get your profile in good shape if you want. Number one, you have to have a great client-facing profile that's super clear about what you do. Number two is then you use LinkedIn search, especially Sales Navigator, to go through almost 1 billion profiles and make these custom lists of your exact ideal prospects. Because, of course, if you know anything about LinkedIn, they've gone big brother on every single user, right? And they know everything about you. So they know where you work, where you live, where you went to school, how many years you've been in your job, how many years you've had each position at your company, what you love to do, volunteer, every single keystroke you've ever put into LinkedIn, every status update, article, skill, anything like that, endorsement. They categorize it, they save it, and they make it searchable. So the great news for us, if we're using LinkedIn for sales and prospecting, is we can go into LinkedIn and build these custom lists and say, I literally want to find CFOs at hospitals in Minneapolis, Minnesota, who attended the University of Minnesota and have been a CFO at a hospital with this many employees for this many years, and also volunteer for Habitat for Humanity. Like, you can be that niched, and then you can make this kind of hyper-personalized list, and so that for every single person I reach out to on that list, they're a CFO, they live in Minneapolis, they went to the University of Minnesota, go Gophers, right? They volunteer for Habitat for Humanity. They're at a hospital of this size. And, they've been in their role for this many years. And so that gives you context for conversations. So it makes it very easy to personalize all that. Now, instead of trying to do that at scale for 200 people a day, you can do it a few different ways. One is you can use LinkedIn to try to really make those lists super niche and super narrow, and then kind of insert those icebreakers into the messaging, because each person, in theory, and what I say in my line is, unless LinkedIn is misleading me, it looks like you live in Chicago. Are you a big Bears fan? And I can do that for 100 prospects that live in Chicago with the same LinkedIn message, right? Now, the reason I say this about, unless LinkedIn is misleading me, is people, the way that LinkedIn categorizes is not always perfect. So somebody might say they went to 5 different universities, and in reality, they just took an online course at one of them, and they're not really an alum and a fan and everything. So I always kind of preface any personalization by saying, unless LinkedIn is misleading me, meaning I'm looking at it from your LinkedIn profile, it looks like you enjoy da-da-da-da-da, or it looks like you live here, or went to school here, or you've spent 20 years doing this. So one way to personalize it at scale is build those hyper nuanced lists, and then insert kind of a safe icebreaker about where they live or whatever, because everyone's based in Houston, Texas, and you can talk about the weather or the Astros or whatever your thing is with Houston, right? And so the cool thing is, what I like to do instead, along with that, but what I really like to do is first gauge interest, meaning I ask one simple question or I write one simple sentence to basically find out from the prospect on LinkedIn that I'm reaching out to, are you even interested in this topic? Are you even looking for help in this area? Do you even want to know more about it? So what I'm finding works really well on LinkedIn right now is a simple one sentence or one question to a prospect. So the one question might be, for example, maybe I want to reach out to a franchise consultant and see if they, want to maybe potentially hire us to do LinkedIn lead generation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out to a franchise consultant and say, hey, Sally, hey, Joe, hey, Bob, whoever it is, can I send you a free copy of my new ebook, LinkedIn Lead Generation for Franchise Consultants? And that's it. That's all I send them, right? And then if I'm reaching out to a business coach, I'll say, hey, Joe, Sally, Bill, can I send you a free copy of my new ebook, LinkedIn Lead Generation for Business Coaches? What I've done is I've created like ebooks. That's the red hot thing right now. Creating a short ebook, 2,000 to 3,000 words that really goes into a niche topic, a niche audience, is really effective, because obviously that's that Dale Carnegie thing. People care about themselves morning, noon, and after dinner. They want to know specifically as it relates to your service, whatever it is, have you done it in my area? Do you work with people like me? Do you have any examples or stories of people just like me that you've helped with this particular service? That's where you want to create some sort of content, be it an ebook, a webinar, a podcast, a video series, an article, a newsletter, anything like that, where you can say, hey, would you be interested in? That's the other one kind of line, message, or question I'll send prospects is, hey, Sally, would you be interested in my best free tips for franchise consultants on how to generate leads with LinkedIn? Hey, Joe, would you be interested in my best free tips on how business coaches are able to get 5 to 6 figure clients from LinkedIn? Hey, Bill, would you be interested in my best free tips for how accountants, bookkeepers, and CPAs can get qualified leads on LinkedIn? I literally just ask one question. And if they reply yes, then I send the content and then I personalize. So step one is just identify interest. Like, are you even interested in this? Would you even want to know about it? Step two is then, hey, great, here's the content I promised. Here's the ebook, here's the webinar, here's the video, here's the podcast. And then, by the way, I see you live in Chicago. Any hope for the Bears this season? Ha, ha, ha. Because as I'm recording this, it's the NFL season and the Chicago Bears are terrible, right? So, and I'm a football fan. And whether or not they're a sports fan, they live in Chicago, they're going to know what I'm talking about. Or, hey, I see you live in so-and-so, such and such, like comment about the weather. Or, hey, I see you went to this school. I'm an alum too. That's so cool. Whatever it is. Like, to me, and going back to my brother-in-law, like, it's worth personalizing the experience now that you know they're interested. And to me, that's a good qualified lead is I identified the exact person who would be a great fit for my service first, with LinkedIn Search and Sales Navigator and everything else. And then second, I asked them, are you interested in this topic? Do you want some of my best free tips? Can I send you my free content? If they say yes, that's checking a couple of really big qualifying boxes for me. Now I'm going to personalize. Now I'm going to bring in the Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Now I'm going to start asking them questions about themselves. Now I'm going to start commenting based on their LinkedIn profile using all these icebreakers, where they live, work, went to school, because it makes it fun, right? It makes it fun, and it provides some nice banter. And I do this all the time with sales leads and sales prospects, where I find out and we do some personal banter. For example, one guy told me he's a huge Chicago Bears fan. So I sent him my book on franchise consulting. And now when I'm chasing him and following up to see what he thinks of the book, I'm putting in on LinkedIn messaging funny Chicago Bears animated GIFs or Chicago Bears jokes or commenting about the latest Chicago Bears game. Because again, that gives me some context for follow-up conversations. It's not just a constant pestering of, did you read the book? Did you read the book? Do you want to talk? Do you want to talk? It's, hey man, rough one for the Bears this weekend. Hope you're okay. And then not even say anything, because he'll write back about the Bears and that will trigger in his memory, oh yeah, this is the guy with the franchise consulting book. I'm going to reply about that too. And so that's why that first step is so important of first identify interest, first gauge interest. If they're interested, now personalize. And that the beautiful thing about LinkedIn that makes it so easy is you can go deeper with each person that's interested, because A, you've sent them free content to look at, so you have that to banter about and see what their thoughts are. And B, you can look at their profile and start asking questions about where they live, went to school, what they're passionate about. And based on what they tell you, just like you have a one-on-one conversation with a real human being at lunch or coffee, you can banter about that and share your own thoughts and experiences. And it gives you an excuse to follow up. Even if it's not business related, you can follow up about an event in their city, or something they said they're passionate about, going to Disney and they went on a trip, and so you took a note, and after their trip you can message them about Disney and they'll write you back because they love Disney and they're happy to tell you about their trip. And that just re-engages the conversation in a non-threatening, non-business way, where now you can slide in and go, hey, that's so cool about your trip. By the way, have you had a chance to look at the proposal I sent? Are we thinking we want to move forward? What are you thinking? Right? So that's the approach I really want to emphasize for LinkedIn that works well. Is step one, identify interest, which is kind of generic, but it's just one simple, quick question is what's working really well on LinkedIn, in mails, one-on-one messages, etc. And then if they say they're interested, give them some sort of free content, some sort of free tips, some sort of free whatever it is, right? And the content or the tips or whatever need to demonstrate your expertise, and they should put your personality into it, your story, who you are, what makes you unique, different, and better, why you love what you do. And I have a whole book on that, by the way, which I'll link to in the show notes, called Content Marketing Made Easy, which is all about how to do that, like all about how to create really good content that, demonstrates expertise and helps people get to know, like, and trust you. Because let your content do the heavy lifting. Let the content be something where they go through your ebook and they say to you, man, I feel like I know you now. I liked your vibe. I really enjoyed your story about this. I love the photo of you and your kids. I can totally relate to your story about ABC. And that's how you build those relationships. Because at the end of the day, any sort of service, any sort of engagement, any sort of transaction between two human beings is still relational. Even if you're buying an iPhone, you have a relationship with Apple. Probably if you're from my area, you had a relationship with Steve Jobs, right? Even though I never met Steve Jobs, I followed him. I consumed all his content. I watched all the keynotes. and I felt like I knew him. And I loved his vision, his energy, his passion. I was excited to be part of his little world and buy his stuff, and it was so cool and hip. And then I met other people that loved Apple products, and we got to be nerds together. And right, that's a relational ecosystem, even though it's a big gajillion-dollar company and product. So same with you. Now, especially if you're a coach, a consultant, a business owner, going directly, doing the selling yourself, even easier to build those quick relationships. So hope that's helpful. Hope you take action with it. Again, I'll put links in the show notes here for everything, all my free templates, books, scripts, everything you need, because it really is effective to use LinkedIn this way to first gauge interest and then get personal. So with all that said, hope you found this helpful, and we'll see you soon on another episode.